Ladies and gentlemen, you become exactly what you think about. Life is not first shaped on the outside. It is shaped on the inside. Every action, every decision, every result you see in your life is nothing more than the fruit of a thought planted in your mind. If you want to change the fruit, you must first change the root, and the root is always in your thoughts. Your mind is the factory of your destiny. Every great achievement, every downfall, every success, every failure began with a thought. Before you built that business, before you started that relationship, before you took that step, it was already alive in your mind. That's why the most powerful thing you can ever master is the power of your thinking. Because if you don't master your mind will master you. Here's the truth. You will always act according to the image you carry of yourself. If you see yourself as broken, you will behave broken. If you see yourself as whole, you will live whole. If you see yourself as a victim, life will keep proving you right. But if you see yourself as victorious, you will rise even in the toughest battles. The picture in your head is the prophecy of your future. This is why fear and faith both come from the same place. They begin with what you choose to focus on. Fear imagines defeat before it happens. Faith imagines victory before it manifests. The same energy it takes to believe everything will fall apart is the same energy it takes to believe everything will come together. The only difference is which thought you choose to feed. What you think about consistently eventually comes out of your mouth. You cannot speak differently from what dominates your thoughts. And once your words are released, they shape your actions, and your actions shape your reality. If you constantly think lack, you will speak lack, and soon enough you will live lack. But if you think abundance, you will speak abundance, and your life will begin to align with abundance. That's why you must guard your mind like treasure. Don't let toxic thoughts set up camp in your head. Don't let negativity, fear, and failure play on repeat like a broken record. Your thoughts are too valuable to be wasted on defeat, because every time you allow a thought to take root, it begins to form your identity. An identity always produces behavior. But here is the good news. You can change your life by changing your thoughts. Renewal always begins in the mind. If you transform your thinking, you will transform your reality. If you start to see yourself as chosen, you will begin to live chosen. If you start to think like a conqueror, you will begin to walk like a conqueror. Change does not start with your circumstances. Change starts with your thoughts about your circumstances. So, ladies and gentlemen, the question is not whether you are thinking. The question is, what are you thinking about? Because sooner or later, that thought will shape your words, your habits, your actions, your character, and ultimately your destiny. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are, and you become exactly what you think about. Everything in life begins with a thought. Before there is action, before there are results, before there is fruit, there is always a seed. And the seed is thought. What you think about in the quiet corners of your mind becomes the direction of your life. If you want to understand the future you are walking into, you don't have to look at your circumstances, you only need to examine your thoughts. Because your mind is the soil where destiny grows, and the harvest you see tomorrow is planted in the thoughts you entertain today. Your thoughts are not harmless, they are creative, they are powerful. They are building something every single moment. The house you live in, the work you do, the relationships you maintain, the level of peace or chaos you experience. These are all reflections of the dominant thoughts you have allowed to take root. That's why you cannot take your thinking lightly. You may not always be able to control every circumstance, but you can control the way you think about those circumstances. And the way you think determines how you respond, and how you respond determines what happens next. Consider this. Two people can go through the exact same situation, and one sees an obstacle while the other sees an opportunity. What makes the difference? The difference is not in what happened to them, but in what they chose to think about what happened. The mind has the power to transform the meaning of every event. If you train your thoughts to focus on possibility, you will always find a way forward. If you allow your thoughts to fixate on limitation, you will always feel stuck. The circumstance does not define the outcome. Your thought about the circumstance does. This is why battles are always fought first in the mind. Before you ever see defeat on the outside, it begins on the inside. Before you ever rise to victory, it starts in your imagination. If the enemy can plant seeds of fear, discouragement, and failure in your mind, he doesn't even have to fight you in real life, because you'll disqualify yourself before you even start. But if you guard your mind, if you fill it with thoughts of strength, faith, and hope, then no attack can hold you down, because even when the storm rages, your inner world is unshaken. Your thoughts are also magnets. They draw to you the people, opportunities, and experiences that match what you dwell on most. If you constantly think about problems, you'll find yourself surrounded by more problems. If you constantly think about solutions, you'll begin to attract the wisdom and people that help you solve them. Like attracts like, whatever dominates your thought life will eventually dominate your real life. That's why if you want to live differently, you have to start thinking differently. The challenge is that most people let their thoughts run wild. They think whatever shows up, without questioning it, without filtering it, without guarding it. But the unguarded mind is like an open field. Anything can be planted there. And once something is planted, it will grow. If you don't pull out the weeds of negative thinking, they will choke out the harvest of positive vision. You cannot allow just anything to take root in your mind. You have to choose your thoughts with the same care that a farmer chooses the seeds for his field, because your mind will grow whatever you put in it. This means you need to become intentional about what you meditate on. Meditation is not complicated. It simply means what you think about over and over again. If you meditate on lack, you'll live in lack. If you meditate on abundance, you'll begin to walk in abundance. If you meditate on weakness, you'll live defeated. But if you meditate on strength, you'll live victorious. Your life will always move in the direction of your most dominant thoughts. So understand this. Thoughts are not just invisible ideas floating through your mind. They are blueprints, they are plans, they are shaping who you are becoming and where you are going. If you don't like where your life is headed, you don't have to fight the outside world first. You must first fight for control of your thoughts. Because the power of thought is the power of creation, and whatever you continually dwell on, you will eventually become. You will always live out the picture you carry of yourself. The way you see yourself in your mind becomes the way you show up in the world. If you see yourself as weak, you will act weak. If you see yourself as strong, you will act strong. If you see yourself as defeated, you will live defeated. But if you see yourself as victorious, you will rise even when everything around you looks like failure. Identity always follows imagination. You can never consistently live higher than the way you think about yourself. When a person carries a small image of themselves, they sabotage opportunities that were designed to elevate them. They shrink back from challenges because they already believe they are not enough. The mind says, "I can't do it. I'm not worthy. I'm not capable." And the body follows. Words and actions become slaves to imagination. That is why you can give two people the same resources, the same tools, and the same environment, and they will produce completely different results. The difference is not in what they were given, but in the way they saw themselves when they received it. Think of a child learning to walk. That child falls again and again, yet never once thinks, "Maybe walking isn't for me." The image in their mind is not of failure, it is of walking. And because that image is strong, they get up every time until their reality matches what they imagined. That same principle applies throughout life. If you only carry an image of defeat, then the moment life knocks you down, you will stay down. But if you carry an image of success, you will rise until what you imagined becomes what you live. What is powerful is that imagination is a form of prophecy. The pictures you hold in your mind are a preview of your future. Your subconscious does not know the difference between what is real and what is repeatedly imagined. If you constantly see yourself struggling, your mind accepts that as truth and directs your actions to make it real. If you constantly see yourself rising, your mind accepts that too and leads you toward opportunities that align with that picture. You are always moving toward the image you focus on most. This is why it is dangerous to allow the world to define your identity. People will tell you what you cannot do, who you cannot become, and where you do not belong. If you take those voices and create an image of yourself around them, you will live limited all your days. But when you choose to see yourself as chosen, as capable, as worthy, as victorious, you build an inner picture that no outside voice can erase. And when that picture becomes strong enough, your actions will rise to meet it. You cannot act outside of identity. That's why habits are so hard to change if the image of yourself has not changed. You can force yourself to do something different for a little while, but if you still imagine yourself as the old version of you, you will return to that version again. True transformation happens when you change the picture inside first. When you start to imagine yourself as disciplined, as strong, as focused, then discipline, strength, and focus flow naturally from you. Actions align with identity, and identity follows imagination. This means you have the ability to paint the picture of your future by choosing the picture of yourself you meditate on today. If you keep seeing yourself as broken, you'll keep living broken. But if you start seeing yourself as whole, you'll begin living whole. If you keep seeing yourself as unworthy, you'll keep rejecting opportunities. But if you start seeing yourself as worthy, you'll start walking through doors that were waiting for you all along. The truth is this: you become the movie that plays in your mind. If you let the wrong images play on repeat, you will live a story you don't want. But if you choose the right images and play them with conviction, you will step into the life you were created for. Your imagination is not just entertainment, it is direction. It is the steering wheel of your destiny. And once you set the right picture inside, your words, your choices, your habits, and your actions will all fall in line to make that picture a reality. So take responsibility for what you see when you close your eyes. See yourself strong. See yourself free. See yourself victorious. Because sooner or later, the image you carry will be the identity you live. You don't rise to the level of your wishes. You rise to the level of your imagination. And the picture you choose to believe about yourself today is the prophecy of the person you will become tomorrow. Both faith and fear are born in the same place, the mind. Before you ever experience either one outwardly, you first cultivate it inwardly. Faith begins with a thought that says, "This is possible. Things will work out. I can make it through." Fear begins with a thought that says, "This is impossible. Everything will fall apart. I won't survive this." The soil is the same, the seed is the thought, and the harvest is either faith or fear depending on what you choose to water. What you meditate on becomes the reality you live in. If you rehearse defeat, fear will grip your heart. If you rehearse victory, faith will rise up within you. The mind is like a screen that constantly plays images. If you keep replaying images of failure, of rejection, of disaster, then your body will respond with anxiety and hesitation. But if you replay images of success, of breakthrough, of overcoming, then your body will respond with courage and determination. Both emotions are powerful, both create energy, but only one moves you forward. It's important to understand that fear and faith are not just feelings. They are forces. They shape your decisions. Fear will convince you to hold back, stay small, and never risk. Faith will push you to step forward, stretch, and grow beyond your limits. Fear builds walls. Faith builds bridges. Fear paralyzes. Faith mobilizes. Fear looks at the future and imagines the worst possible outcome. Faith looks at the same future and imagines the best possible outcome. And the difference between the two is not circumstance, it's thought. This is why the battle for destiny is always a battle of focus. Whatever you give your attention to will expand. If you keep focusing on everything that could go wrong, fear will expand until it dominates you. If you keep focusing on everything that could go right, faith will expand until it carries you. The circumstances don't have to change for your experience to change. You only have to change what you are focusing on in your mind. Think about this. When people face challenges, they often imagine outcomes that haven't even happened yet. The situation is difficult, but in their mind, they see 10 different disasters. Fear thrives on imagination. It feeds on what might happen, not what has actually happened. That's why fear can feel so overwhelming, because it's painting a picture of a future that doesn't even exist yet. Faith uses the same imagination, but it paints a different picture. It imagines solutions instead of disasters. It imagines provision instead of loss. It imagines healing instead of defeat. Both are invisible until they are chosen, but once chosen, they begin to shape reality. Fear and faith cannot dominate the same space at the same time. One will push the other out. That means if you are full of fear, you cannot move in faith until you shift your thoughts. And if you are full of faith, fear has no room to control you. You have to make a conscious decision about which voice you will listen to. Fear says, stay where you are, you're not ready. Faith says, step forward, the way will open. Fear says, you will lose everything. Faith says, you will gain more than you imagined. Fear says, you are not enough. Faith says, you already have enough to start. Which voice you believe will become the life you live. Every great breakthrough requires a choice between these two forces. Nobody ever accomplished something great without first feeling fear. The difference is that they didn't let fear have the final say. They chose to focus on faith. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward in faith, even while fear is whispering. If you wait for fear to leave before you act, you'll wait forever. But if you act in faith, fear loses its grip and faith grows stronger. So examine what you are feeding in your mind. Every thought is like food. If you keep feeding fear with thoughts of failure, it will grow stronger. If you keep feeding faith with thoughts of possibility, it will grow stronger. You cannot live a life of faith on a diet of fearful thoughts. You cannot live a life of courage if you constantly replay defeat in your mind. You must become intentional about choosing which images and which words you allow to dominate your mental space. Faith and fear both demand belief in something unseen. Fear demands you believe in the unseen failure. Faith demands you believe in the unseen victory. One will lock you down, the other will lift you up. The deciding factor is always the same. What you choose to meditate on, what you choose to imagine, what you choose to believe. So when your mind begins to wander into fear, pull it back into faith. When thoughts of failure rise, counter them with thoughts of success. When fear says you can't, let faith remind you you can, because at the end of the day, you will always become the fruit of your meditation. And if you want to live in breakthrough, you must feed the thought that creates faith and starve the thought that creates fear. What you think about most will eventually shape the words that come out of your mouth, and those words will then shape the reality you live in. Thoughts never stay silent forever. They always seek expression, and the first place they find release is through the tongue. When your mind is filled with worry, anxiety, and negativity, you will inevitably speak words that reflect fear and limitation. And when your mind is filled with hope, gratitude, and expectation, your speech will naturally carry life, power, and possibility. Words are the echo of thoughts, and they act like seeds cast into the soil of your future. Every word you speak is a builder. Some words build bridges, some words build walls, some words build hope, and some words build despair. But those words do not appear randomly. They are born in the secret place of your imagination. If you allow your mind to meditate on defeat, you will speak defeat. If you dwell on victory, you will speak victory. And the more you speak it, the more it begins to manifest in your actions, relationships, and results. Life and death, success and failure, abundance and lack, all of them begin in the thoughts of your heart and flow out through the words of your mouth. The power of words is that they don't just describe reality, they shape it. When you declare something long enough, your behavior begins to align with that declaration. If you constantly say, "I'll never get out of this situation," your mind will begin to search for ways to prove those words true. If you consistently say, "I know I will overcome this," your mind will begin to find solutions that move you toward victory. Words are like commands given to your subconscious, and once spoken, your whole being works to carry them out. This is why careless speech is so dangerous. Some people think they are just joking, or just venting, or just being realistic, when in truth they are programming their own future with words that were birthed in negative thoughts. Every "I can't," every "I'm not good enough," every "things never work out for me" becomes a prophecy of self-sabotage, and once those words are spoken enough times, they harden into beliefs. Beliefs create habits, and habits create lifestyles. What started as a simple thought becomes a spoken word, then a lived reality, but this truth also works for good. When your thoughts are filled with hope and strength, your words carry life. You begin to declare, "I am capable, I am growing, I am moving forward, I am blessed." And as those words flow consistently, they rewire your thinking, they inspire your actions, and they attract opportunities that align with them. Speaking life does not mean ignoring reality. It means choosing to focus on the greater reality of what is possible instead of what is limiting. It means letting your words reflect faith instead of fear, abundance instead of lack, victory instead of defeat. Think about how words shape the atmosphere in a room. Two people can walk into the same environment and, by their words, completely transform it. One person speaks doubt, criticism, and negativity, and the atmosphere becomes heavy. Another person speaks encouragement, vision, and hope, and suddenly the same place feels lighter. If words can change a room, imagine what they can do over a lifetime. And remember, those words didn't start in the mouth. They started in the mind. The discipline then is to become aware of your thoughts before they become words. Ask yourself, what am I meditating on daily? What kinds of thoughts am I entertaining in the silence of my mind? Because sooner or later, they will spill out of your mouth, and once they do, they will set the direction of your life. Your words are like the steering wheel, but your thoughts are the engine that drives them. If the engine is filled with toxic fuel, your words will be toxic, and your destination will reflect it. If the engine is filled with the fuel of vision and purpose, your words will align with it, and your destination will reflect that as well. This is why speaking words of life is not just about positive thinking. It's about intentional thinking. If you want to change your speech, you must first change your meditation. If you want your words to create abundance, you must fill your mind with abundant thoughts. If you want your words to inspire courage, you must fill your mind with courageous thoughts. Thoughts feed words feed actions, and actions feed destiny. The cycle always begins with the mind, but it always manifests with the mouth. So guard your words, because they are shaping more than just conversations. They are shaping your future. Speak only what you want to see, not what you fear to see. And when you speak, let it come from a mind that has been trained to dwell on the true, the powerful, and the possible. Because what starts as a thought will become a word, and what becomes a word will eventually become your world. Your mind is the most valuable territory you will ever own, and what you allow to live there will determine the quality of your life. Every thought is a seed, and your mind is the soil. If you let just anything be planted in that soil, don't be surprised when weeds begin to grow and choke out the harvest you wanted. Guarding your mind is not optional, it is essential. Because whatever enters your mind repeatedly becomes who you are. Most people are not destroyed by outside forces. They are destroyed by inside influences. Words, images, and ideas that were allowed into the mind become strongholds that shape actions, choices, and outcomes. If you constantly allow negativity, fear, and doubt to feed your thoughts, you will eventually live in a reality built by those things. It's like leaving the front door of your home open to anyone who passes by. Some will come in to encourage you, but others will come in to rob you. You would never leave your physical house unguarded, so why would you leave your mental house wide open to whatever the world throws at it? Guarding the mind means being intentional about what you expose yourself to. Every conversation you have, every piece of content you consume, every environment you step into, all of it is feeding your thoughts. And because repetition creates belief, whatever you allow in consistently will eventually feel true. If you listen to voices that say you're not good enough, over time you will start to believe it. If you listen to voices that say you are capable and chosen, over time you will start to live it. It is not just about what you hear once. It is about what you hear again and again until it becomes a part of you. That's why protecting your mind is not a one-time act. It is a daily discipline. You can't guard your mind on Monday and then leave it exposed for the rest of the week. Just as you lock your door every night without fail, you must also lock the doors of your mind against thoughts that don't serve you. This means noticing when negative thoughts try to slip in, catching them before they take root, and replacing them with thoughts of truth, strength, and purpose. When you guard your mind, you also gain control over your emotions. Many people live in constant anxiety, not because of what is happening around them, but because of what they have allowed to happen within them. The mind creates stories about failure, rejection, or catastrophe, and the emotions follow. But when you filter those thoughts and refuse to entertain them, peace has room to grow. The outside world may still be chaotic, but your inner world remains calm because you have chosen what is allowed inside. Think of your mind like a garden. If you want beautiful flowers to grow, you must not only plant them, but also protect them from weeds. A gardener doesn't just hope that flowers will outgrow the weeds. He actively pulls the weeds out to give the flowers room to flourish. In the same way, you cannot just fill your mind with positive thoughts once and assume they will remain untouched. You have to continually guard against the weeds of fear, doubt, comparison, and negativity. Left unchecked, those weeds spread quickly, but when guarded, the flowers of faith, vision, and abundance will thrive. Guarding your mind also means being careful about the company you keep. People are carriers of thoughts. Every conversation you have is planting something in your soil. Some people water your faith, others water your fear. Some people pull you toward vision, others pull you toward limitation. If you surround yourself with people who constantly speak negativity, it will be nearly impossible to keep your mind filled with positive, purposeful thoughts. But if you surround yourself with people who carry vision, strength, and wisdom, their words will help you protect and reinforce your mental space. The truth is, you can't stop every thought from knocking on the door of your mind, but you can decide which ones are allowed to come in and stay. Guarding your mind is not about pretending bad thoughts don't exist. It's about refusing to let them build a home inside you. You acknowledge them, you confront them, and then you replace them with the kind of thoughts that align with who you want to become. Because every time you allow a thought to remain, it grows stronger roots, and eventually those roots produce the fruit of your life. So be vigilant. Guard your mind as though your future depends on it, because it does. Protect it from lies, from fear, from destructive voices. Feed it with truth, with vision, with possibility. because the mind you guard today is the life you will live tomorrow. If you treasure it, nurture it, and defend it, it will reward you with a destiny that reflects the greatness you were always meant to walk in. Change always begins in the mind. You cannot transform your life by starting with the outside. The outside is only a reflection of the inside. Many people try to change their circumstances, their habits, their environment, without first changing the way they think. But if the same thoughts remain, the same patterns will repeat. True transformation happens when the mind is renewed, when the thought process is rewired, when the inner narrative shifts from limitation to possibility, from weakness to strength, from defeat to victory. Every action is birthed from a thought. Every habit begins with a single decision that was first conceived in the mind. If you want to change your actions, you must first change the thoughts that produce them. Otherwise, the actions may change temporarily, but the old thoughts will eventually pull you back into the same cycles. That's why people can leave a toxic relationship only to find themselves in another one, or escape financial hardship only to repeat the same mistakes. The external change didn't last because the internal mindset never shifted. Renewal of the mind is the only path to lasting transformation. Think about how powerful it is that the mind can be renewed. It means you are not trapped by the way you've always thought. It means you are not a prisoner of your upbringing, your past, or your environment. You can literally rewire your brain by choosing new thoughts and rehearsing them until they become the dominant pattern. The mind is like a path through a field. The more you walk down a certain trail, the clearer it becomes. But if you stop walking that path and start walking a new one, the old trail begins to fade, and the new one grows stronger. That's how transformation happens. You stop feeding the old thoughts, and you deliberately feed the new ones until they shape a new life. Renewal requires discipline. Old thoughts do not disappear overnight. They try to return, whispering the same lies you used to believe. They remind you of your failures, your weaknesses, your mistakes. But every time they rise, you have a choice to accept them and let them pull you back, or to confront them and replace them with the truth. Renewal is not about ignoring reality. It's about refusing to let negative interpretations of reality control you. It's about looking at the same situation with a renewed perspective that says, "This may be hard, but I am capable. This may take time, but I am patient. This may look impossible, but I know it is possible." Transformation through renewal also requires vision. You cannot just reject the old thoughts. You must replace them with new ones that align with where you want to go. If you don't intentionally choose the new thoughts, your mind will default back to the old ones. You must fill your imagination with pictures of who you want to become. See yourself strong. See yourself disciplined. See yourself walking in purpose. The more vividly you see it in your mind, the more naturally your life will begin to align with it. Vision is the anchor of renewed thinking. Another key is consistency. Renewing the mind is not a one-time act. It is a daily process. Just as you cannot shower once and expect to stay clean for life, you cannot renew your mind once and expect to stay transformed. Every day, you are exposed to voices, images, and influences that try to drag your thinking back into old patterns. Every day, you must choose to filter, to guard, to replace, to rehearse the thoughts that align with your transformation. Over time, those repeated choices rewire your brain and reshape your life. The beauty of this process is that when the mind is renewed, everything else follows. Your words change because your thoughts have changed. Your habits change because your decisions have changed. Your relationships change because your self-image has changed. Your opportunities change because your perspective has changed. Renewal is the key that unlocks every other door. Once you think differently, you live differently, and when you live differently, you attract a completely different future. So if you feel trapped in cycles that seem unbreakable, the answer is not to fight harder on the outside. It is to fight smarter on the inside. Begin to renew your mind daily. Confront the lies, replace them with truth. Imagine the life you want to live, and let your thoughts become the architect of your transformation. Because when you change your thinking, you change your identity. And when you change your identity, your entire life begins to align with the new you. The power of renewal is that it doesn't just make you better at who you used to be. It makes you someone entirely new. The old you may have been stuck, broken, or limited. The renewed you is free, whole, and limitless. And the bridge between the old and the new is not found in your circumstances. It is found in your thoughts. Transform your thinking, and you transform your life.